Hello friends, welcome back to the channel. So I get an awful lot of people messaging me, asking me for advice about feeding their shrimp. What should I feed the shrimp? How often should I feed the shrimp? How much should I feed the shrimp? So I thought I would make a video sharing with you guys my 5 top tips when it comes to feeding your shrimp. So starting with tip number 5, the first thing I would say is make sure you actually feed your shrimp enough food. No end of times I will start a conversation with somebody, either over email or YouTube comments, or they'll join the Discord server and they'll message me and they'll say, why aren't my shrimp breeding? Why isn't my colony growing? Whatever it might be. And when we get into conversation, I will often ask them questions about their feeding regime. What are you feeding? How much are you feeding, etc. And they will very often reply saying, well, I don't feed my shrimp, they're cleanup crew. They're scavengers, Richard. Didn't you know they just eat all of the leftover food? And whilst that is true, they are scavengers. They are, at the end of the day, in the wild, they're detrivores. They make their living eating dead or decaying plant matter, or bugs that have fallen in the water, or other dead fish, or dead shrimp, or bits of algae, or whatever it might be. They will literally eat anything. In the wild, they have an abundance of food, and they have great variety. Whereas in our aquariums, if we're just expecting them to make do with some leftover flake food, or the remains of an algae wafer that the plecos didn't eat, the colony is never going to thrive. The colony is never going to grow big and strong and produce lots of babies. So there's no doubt that tip number 5 has to be, make sure you feed your shrimp enough food so that the colony grows. And you need to target feed them. And that might be that you put in a lump of rapashi, or you put in extra algae wafers to make sure the shrimp get some, as well as your pleco, or whatever it might be. It might mean that instead of feeding 1 cube of frozen bloodworms, you end up putting 1.5 or 2 in, so that yes, the fish get some, but enough get down to the shrimp as well, so the shrimp can eat enough to allow themselves to become big and strong and produce a healthy colony. Now, tip number 4 may well sound absolutely counterintuitive to tip number 5, which is make sure you don't overfeed your shrimp. Now, yes, we want to get enough food down to our shrimp, exactly as I just discussed, but we do need to be careful we don't overfeed our shrimp. If we're chucking great handfuls of food in every single day, if we're putting in more food than the shrimp can consume, then we're going to end up with our water quality being poor. The excess food will pollute our water quality. We're going to end up with food breaking down and ending up in the substrate, leading to detritus worms. We're going to end up with things like planaria and hydra, things that thrive on excess food being in the water column. It's really important we try and work out how much food our shrimp will eat in a given amount of time, and then train ourselves to just put in that much food. Now, it might be that your colony of shrimp will eat 1 algae wafer in a couple of hours. It might be that your colony of shrimp is 5, 6, 7, 800 individuals, and they need half a dozen algae wafers. They need 2 cubes of bloodworm. They need a good size lump of rapashi. One of the hardest parts of being a shrimp owner is working out how much food you need to feed your shrimp so you're neither underfeeding nor overfeeding. And this comes through trial and error. You put some food in on a given day. If that food is gone in about 20 minutes, then maybe next time you put more food. Equally, if you put some food in and 4, 5, 6, 7 hours later, the shrimp have lost interest and they've wandered off and there's still food in there, maybe next time you feed less food. And you use this technique of a bit more, a bit less, just to balance yourself out. And often within a week or two, you can work out almost exactly how much your colony of shrimp will eat in a set period of time. Just remember, as the colony grows, you may well need to increase the amount of food. Yes, your 15 shrimp will eat 1 algae wafer today, but when your 15 shrimp are 150 shrimp in 3, 4, 5 months' time, that 1 algae wafer isn't going to be enough. You're going to need to add additional food. So tip number 3 is to make sure you supply your baby shrimp with food. Now, when the female kicks the babies out of their eggs, they typically are not especially mobile. They tend to remain more or less where she drops them, and they'll remain there perhaps for the first week or 2. Now, if, like me, up in the breeding tank here, we've got a huge pile of rocks, and the female kicks the babies out at the back, and I'm always dropping the food in at the front, those babies typically will end up starving out before they grow large enough to venture down and come to the food. We need to make sure we get food into every corner of the tank, so wherever the babies may be, they have access to food. Now, one of the easiest ways to do this is to either feed a powdered food or to take something like a flake or even an algae wafer or a pellet and crush it up into a powder and sprinkle it into the water so it spreads around the entire tank. Recently, I've spent a lot of time putting flake and pellet foods into a spice grinder, which I think is also a coffee grinder, and grinding that up into a fine powder that I then sprinkle into the water and allow it to spread all around the tank. That way, wherever our babies get kicked out, wherever our babies end up, there'll be food available for them. Again, we have to be careful. If I dump a great fistful of powdered food in there, it's just going up rotting, it's going to spoil my water and ultimately kill my shrimp. So again, you have to find the balance between putting some powdered food into the water and not polluting your water. Typically, if every couple of 3 days you add a small pinch of powdered food, that food will spread around the tank and your baby shrimp will find it wherever they may be, and they will eat and become large enough then to venture out and join the main colony and eat wherever it may be that the food lands. So feeding our shrimp is a major part of being a shrimp owner. If you want your colony to grow, you want to have lots of babies, you do need to feed ample food, lots of variety, and you need to get it to all of the babies in the tank. Feeding our shrimp is so important. That's why in my book, the Neocaridina Shrimp Handbook, I cover feeding in great detail. I cover what we should feed, how often we should feed, how much we should feed. I go into quite some depth onto feeding our shrimp. In fact, the Neocaridina Shrimp Handbook is 97 pages packed full of information about feeding, breeding, keeping, tank mates, plants, filtering, lighting. Every aspect of being a Neocaridina shrimp keeper is covered in the book. In the description below, I've included a link for 50% off the normal price if you want to download a copy for yourself. So on to tip number 2, and tip number 2 has got to be feed your shrimp leaves. Now there are essentially 2 different ways we can use leaves in our aquarium. We can use dried leaves like catappa leaves or Indian almond leaves or oak leaves, beech leaves, banana leaves, whatever they might be. We add these dried leaves to the aquarium, and as they break down, the shrimp absolutely dine on them. They're not only eating the leaf itself as it breaks down, but they're eating the bacteria that forms in it, the biofilm that develops on that leaf. Adding dried leaves to your aquarium has to be one of the secrets to being a good shrimp keeper, to being a successful shrimp keeper and breeder. If you listen to podcasts or YouTube videos from just about any successful shrimp keeper or breeder, they will tell you that dried leaves, like catappa leaves, are one of their secrets to producing a good, strong colony of shrimp. Now, typically we buy these leaves in dry, we drop them in our aquarium, they might float for 2 or 3 days before they slowly sink to the bottom. Well, they'll sit for 1, 2, 3 weeks, breaking down, and as they break down, as I say, the shrimp absolutely feast on them. The trick is, as that leaf starts to break down, you drop another leaf into the tank. Within a week or 2, that has sunk to the bottom and started to break down, by which time this leaf has gone, and you start a cycle of always having dried leaves in the aquarium for the shrimp to literally dine on. The other type of leaves we can add to our aquariums are fresh leaves. They might be stinging nettles, they might be dandelions, they might be mulberry leaves, whatever they are. Adding fresh leaves to our aquarium provides a different food source for the shrimp, and shrimp absolutely go bananas for them. If you've ever taken a stinging nettle leaf, blanched it for a minute or 2 in boiling water and dropped it into your tank, you will notice the shrimp almost instantly swarm it and spend the next 24, 48 hours breaking that leaf down until it's absolutely nothing. Adding fresh leaves to our aquariums for our shrimps to feed on, in my experience, is an absolute must, and it provides more variety, more vitamins and minerals and nutrients for the shrimp that they might not be getting from the flakes or the algae wafers or whatever else it might be. I don't think I could ever run a successful shrimp colony without using a combination of dried and fresh leaves. And tip number 1 has to be feed your shrimp lots and lots of frozen foods. Frozen bloodworm, frozen brine shrimp, frozen daphnia, whatever it might be. Your shrimp will absolutely thrive on the protein from the frozen foods. When my wife and I were breeding shrimp commercially, we fed frozen bloodworms to our shrimp several times a week. And sometimes, if we really wanted to crank out the babies, we would feed frozen bloodworms to our colonies every single day. Whenever you put frozen bloodworms into the aquarium, the shrimp are on it almost instantly. In the wild, a large part of a shrimp's diet would be bugs that have fallen into the water, or shrimp that have died, or fish that have died, and the shrimp will consume them. Now, we don't want to be chucking dead fish or dead shrimp into our aquariums, but we can add frozen bloodworms. We can add frozen daphnia or brine shrimp or mysis shrimp or whatever it might be. Producing lots of baby shrimp takes its toll on the female shrimp's bodies, and we can help provide them with lots of protein and other goodness by feeding them frozen bloodworm or brine shrimp or whatever it might be. Now, if you're still watching the video at this point, I'm guessing you really are interested in becoming a better shrimp keeper. I've built up a library of more than 250 videos, many of which are on the subject of shrimp and shrimp keeping and breeding. And I've got many more videos lined up. In fact, in the next few days, I filmed the first episode of the Shrimp Keeping Podcast. So why not subscribe to the channel so you don't end up missing out on any of those videos? And if you want to learn more about feeding leaves to your shrimp, why not watch this video next? Thanks for watching.